Just 2 weeks after buying this rather gorgeous Moorish idol, I've already decided I need to move him on, so today I'll tell you why and I will share with you my admittedly limited experience. Now before I start I need to tell you that this video is not actually intended to put you off getting a Moorish idol. I of course have had very limited experience with this fish, but I still think this video is worth sharing, partly because of the type of corals that this particular Moorish idol went for, which were not what I was expecting, and what he did to them. And these videos tend to attract people who've kept these fish, so if that's you and you've had a Moorish idol before, share your experiences with the community in the comment section below. So then, as you will have deduced, the reason I decided to move the idol on was because he started nipping at my corals. But this wasn't the typical coral munching scenario whereby a fish goes rogue and destroys everything in sight, and I was a little surprised by the corals he went for. The idol was in a tank with various fleshy corals like scollies, trackies, blastos and acans that are usually prime targets for coral eating fish like angelfish or butterflies. However, he didn't touch the scollies, blastos or the trackie, and he only had one little peck at one of the acans. He also didn't touch any of my various goniopora corals or my hammer corals, nor did he go for any of my zoas, of which I have 3 or 4 different types. And finally, he didn't show any interest in my dorasa clam or my rockflower anemone, for which I'm very grateful. Instead though, the corals he did peck at were the much thinner LPS corals like my maize coral, favias, and worst of all for me, my chalices. I'll start with the chalices because that's where you can see the most visible damage, and he seemed to take chunks of flesh off these at random. He didn't demolish any of them completely, and this Raja Rampage suffered probably the worst damage, but even then it's not really that bad. You can't really see that much damage on the maize coral, although you can see how sad the favia is looking, but these corals in particular were the ones that I saw him pecking at the most. Because those corals basically have paint on flesh, I'm guessing these corals are actually quite difficult for a fish to eat, but I saw him scraping at them on several occasions, so I can only assume they are absolutely bloody delicious. There were 2 other corals he went for the most after the chalices, the first of which was my 2 small fungiofrags. Again, I saw him peck at these several times, and I actually moved one of them to a different tank after he spent a good 5 minutes chewing on it right in front of me. Although to be fair to him, he didn't do a massive amount of damage to it, and he didn't touch my 2 full-size fungias, so I do wonder if he would have been okay long term, and it is possible that he would have been one of those fish that just pecks at corals occasionally without ever really doing major damage and without eating anything altogether. And in fact, that is the opinion of tricky fish expert Elliot from Marine Collectors, who had this to say on a recent Tidal Gardens video.
Do you know if those things eat coral?
90% of the customers that buy them from us put them into reef tanks with no issues.
Oh, okay.
But dietarily, yeah, they'll probably pick at stuff. Now, whether or not they'll pick at stuff to the point where now that coral's dying,
Tough to say.
Probably not.
Despite that though, I took the view that things were only likely to get worse, not better. He absolutely hammered my Christmas tree worm rock, and this isn't a long established tank full of large colonies that can survive the occasional nip here and there. It's a young tank with mostly frags or small colonies, and so I can't afford to take as much damage as some other reefers might. Ultimately for me this was all about weighing the risks, and I decided to take the risk averse approach of catching him and removing him. There is one other complication here though, and that is that I do have another potential coral muncher in my tank, in the form of my 2-barred rabbitfish. Now I had this fish in my last tank for a couple of years, and he didn't touch anything in that tank, and I haven't seen him touch anything in this tank with my own eyes, but it is possible that he's responsible for some of the nipping, and ultimately, even though he's innocent until proven guilty at this stage, I didn't want him to learn how to eat coral from the Moorish idol, which was another reason to move the idol on. Away from the coral munching, and it's usually actually diet that is the main concern with these fish, so I'll tell you briefly what mine did and didn't eat. Firstly, I tried him on nori sheets. Now he didn't pay much attention to that stuff, but I think he would have done had I persevered with it a bit longer and trained him to look for it. But he did go for the Hikari seaweed pellets. I have the small size pellets and he struggled a little bit to pick them up to the eye, but he did eat them when he could find them, and as a Brucey bonus, plenty of my other fish seem to go for this stuff too, so I'll keep feeding those once the idol is gone to give my other fish a more varied diet, and if I was starting again, I'd get the larger size pellets to give the idol a better chance of seeing them. The idol of course ate mysis shrimp, which fish doesn't, but they are high in protein and low in fibre, which is reportedly the opposite of what Moorish idols want. But the good news is this guy absolutely loves TMC Vitality Boost pellets, which are high in fibre. On the label they're listed at 13% crude fibre, which is over double the next nearest high fibre food I could find, and the idol, and all my other fish for that matter, went crazy for the stuff. In fact, when I first put the fish trap in, the idol just nervously hung around the entrance for a few seconds without without ever going in, but when I put the Vitality boost pellets in, he was straight in like a rat up a drainpipe. Ultimately then, my experience with the Moorish idol was that he was very easy to feed in the 2 weeks I had him, but that he was probably a bit too keen on nipping corals for my liking, and ultimately I decided to move him on to avoid the risk of him demolishing half of my corals over the time. But again, I only had the fish for 2 weeks, so you can take this video with a very generous pinch of salt. If you've got any questions or if you think I've missed anything, let me know in the comments section below, and if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for next time, and until then, happy reefing.